Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. This morning, I'd like to share a passage with you from Paul's letter to Colossians, chapter 3, and beginning with part of verse 9. It reads this way: You have stripped off your old sinful nature and all its wicked deeds. Put on your new nature and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like Him. In this new life, it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or Gentile, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbaric, uncivilized, slave, or free. Christ is all that matters, and Him living in us is what counts. Well, this passage starts out by Paul saying, You put off your old sinful nature and your wicked ways. Now, theologically, that means that we're all born with sin. Put it in non-theological terms, we're all born with desires and attitudes and ways that don't put God first. They put ourselves first. I mean, look at most little kids. They have to learn how to share. They have to learn how to be kind. They have to learn how to control anger and learn to control what happens when you don't get your way. Now, it's one thing when a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old does that. It's another thing when a 25 or 30 or 50 or 60 or older person does that. You see, Paul is saying, you put off that. When we accept the Lord into our lives, we agree to not live like that. The very last part of this, where it says He lives in all of us and we're to live in Him, the notion is that when we become a Christian, we change. Now, I know a lot of people grow up in a church and they don't know that they've changed, but I bet you they have. Maybe their change wasn't as dramatic as the drunkard who finds God later in life. But they're not the same person they were. Look back over the things that they did. Oh, maybe they didn't destroy somebody's life or tear up something terrible, but they've done things that weren't good. And you have too. And so it says that we put off that stuff. We put it off and we've done something else. And there's something else we've done is that we've put on a new nature as we learn to know our Creator and become like Him. Christianity is not just a belief. It's more than that. In fact, the word in the Greek to believe doesn't mean to intellectually change my opinion. It means to stop what I'm doing, turn around, do something differently. So you see, when we accept the Lord into our lives, we should act differently than we did before. Maybe it's not a radical change, but it's still a change. And then here's the important part of this passage. He says that when we do that, let me read it again. In this new life, it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or a Gentile, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbaric, uncivilized, slave, or free. Doesn't matter where you came from. Doesn't matter your heritage. When we become a Christian, all that matters is we now try to live like Him. Now, a lot of the people who are listening today have grown up in Christian homes, and they don't see the radicalness of this. They don't see the unusualness of this. So I'm going to give you a little story, share a story. Probably the greatest sermon I ever preached was preached accidentally. Now let me explain. I was working in a village in Nicaragua, and when they found out I was a preacher, they asked me to preach at the next church service. And I'm trying to think, what can I do with my Spanish, which I hadn't used for a long time? And you don't want to preach and insult people because your vocabulary is wrong or your grammar's terrible. So I came up with a sermon I thought I could get through. And it comes from the Bible, from Psalms, how we are all equal in God's eyes. Now, Latin Americans who aren't the elite, which is 60, 70, 80% of the people, they've been told for generations that they're not equal to anybody else. They're not equal to the important people in their country, and they're sure as heck not equal to the people in the United States. So I came there to this village. Place was packed. They literally were hanging out the windows. And I make this comment about how we're all equal in God's eyes. And after I finished, I waited because I knew that I only preached about 10 minutes, maybe 15. And in a Latin service, if you don't go at least an hour, hour and a half, you didn't do much. So I knew the local pastor was going to preach after me. And he did. But he said something that just overwhelmed my heart. He made this statement. He said to the church, he said, folks, never in my life could I have dreamed that a North American preacher would come and preach in my church. He was so thankful. But then he went on and he said, but even if I could have dreamed that, I never could have dreamed that a North American preacher would come into my church and say that we're all equals. Boy, talk about being humbled. All I was trying to do was get through my Spanish. I wasn't trying to say anything profound, but it did. And the profoundness of that remains today. It doesn't matter who you were before you became a Christian. It doesn't matter how wonderful you were or how horrible and awful you were. It doesn't matter where your family came from. It doesn't matter about anything. Once you become a Christian, you join a body, a whole group, a cadre, you join a people where we're all equal in God's sight. We're all his kids. And so today, if you're having trouble thinking you're worth something, and at some point in time you did ask the Lord to come into your life, just remember, you're important. You're equal to everybody else in the kingdom. Well, thanks for listening. If you have a concern or a prayer need that we can help you with, please let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. So until tomorrow, I hope you have a really great day. God bless you. I'll talk to you again.